Welcome to the February Globe Observer Connect session. I'm Kristen Weaver. I'm the Deputy Coordinator for Globe Observer, and we also have Holly Cole, the coordinator of the program, and then we have Cassie Sofing, who is running the webinar for us. But we are here today to hear about some of the results from the Eclipse data that was collected in April of last year, which we're getting pretty close to a year ago. So that's pretty exciting. Just a reminder that we are recording this session and we will get it posted up on the website. So if you don't want to have your image or your voice on the audio and video recording, you can put your questions that you have in the chat, but just be aware that it is being recorded. So without taking too much time, I am going to turn it over to Marilé Colon Robles, who is our Clouds project scientist down at NASA Langley Research Center, as well as Ashley Artore, who's been doing the specific, a researcher down there at Langley, who's been doing the specific work on looking at this data. So take it away, Marilé and Ashley.
Thank you, Kristen. Hello, everybody. It's so great to see you all. And a big thank you for all of those that made observations. We are very lucky to have Ashley Autore, part of the GLOBE team at NASA Langley Research Center. And she looked at all your data and assessed what was happening or what did the data tell us. And just a quick reminder, this is just one of the many ways that you can look at the data and use it in research. And so I'm going to be in the chat, monitoring the chat and letting Ashley know about questions and helping out Kristen and Holly in the chat. But I'm going to pass it on to our researcher, Ashley Autore.
Great. Thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us. I'm going to share my PowerPoint slide, and we will talk all about the April eclipse and all of the research. So let's see. Can everyone see the full screen PowerPoint?
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you. So again, talking about the April 2024 total solar eclipse. And this eclipse, well, first I'll introduce myself. I'm Ashley. As Marilé already said, I am a data scientist here helping out with the Globe Clouds team, assessing, analyzing, researching the data that you all submit through Globe Observer. I grew up in rural New Jersey, and I originally went to school for biomedical engineering, thought I was really going a different path from where I ended up. I ended up switching to meteorology and climatology about halfway through, and then I went on to LSU to get my master's in GIS certificate. If you are at all familiar with aviation weather, you will see I have tattoos of my master's thesis, which those are METAR symbols. So maybe you recognize them. If not, remind us during the FAQ and we can tell you what they are. During my master's, I had an internship with a contracting company. And then once I completed my master's, I went on to be a full-time contractor through NASA. So the GLOBE program, in case you are new to GLOBE, it is the Global Learning and Observations to Benefit the Environment program. It's almost 30 years old and in 127 different countries. So hopefully you have been making observations, you know about GLOBE, and you've been submitting your data. We are always excited to see what you have for us. In 2016, GLOBE released their Globe Observer app to help make it even easier for everyone to submit data and show us what's going on in your environment, in the world around you. We have over 287,000 users right now. So about the solar eclipse. NASA has been studying solar eclipses for a very long time. Everything that we know on Earth as it is happens because of the sun. Without the sun, we wouldn't have life as we know it. So it's very important for us to understand and study the interactions between the sun and everything about Earth. NASA has used all sorts of technology to study solar eclipses, like ground sensors, high altitude aircraft, rockets, and of course, Globe Observer, and so many more. So please, anytime you have data, you think something's happening, submit it to us. We want to see what you see. This is just a little diagram demonstrating how the sun interacts with Earth. You can see it really does affect everything. And a solar eclipse allows us to take a small snapshot of what's happening and study how rapidly things can change. Of course you can study when the sun goes down and it's nighttime, but a solar eclipse is a really unique opportunity because of how rapidly the changes are happening. The 2017 solar eclipse was a total solar eclipse that occurred over North America. And one of my colleagues, Dr. Brant Dodson, actually studied this eclipse, and he used the Globe Observer data points to observe how the cloud changes in cloud coverage affected temperature drop during the solar eclipse. So we have some of his graphs down here. So if you submitted data points during that 2017 eclipse, thank you. You made all of that research possible. And we continued studying the solar eclipse using the 2024 data, as well as some of the 2023 data from the partial solar eclipse that happened in October. When you submit data for a solar eclipse through the Globe Observer, this is just a little snapshot of what we ask for. We ask you to show us your land cover so we can see what type of environment you're in, as well as your thermometer, so we can make sure you're not using something like a meat thermometer trying to measure the temperature. We ask you to show us the clouds every 15 to 30 minutes or anytime you see something happening, anything that's changing. And then, of course, we also want you to actually use your thermometer and give us the air temperature data every 5 to 10 minutes, 2 hours before and after the eclipse maximum. So that way we can actually see how the environment and the clouds and the atmosphere changed throughout the eclipse all the way through the end, instead of just during and before. Now here's a little snapshot of the data from the October partial eclipse. So I hope you can see we have the air temperature on the left, we've got cloud coverage in the middle, and then your land cover photos on the right. Again, we love seeing everything you submit to us. So please do that. All of your data points matter. We do study them. We will use them in research projects. And I hope you can see we really did. Maybe you can recognize one of your points here and you can tell us, hey, I know that observation was mine. So we had over 500 unique users submit data for the October eclipse from over 1,100 sites. So that's a huge reach, and we were very excited to see that. Now, of course, we have an even larger reach for the 2024 solar eclipse. Now, here we had over 2,100 user IDs and over 2,800 different sites. So between the two 2023 and 2024 solar eclipses, we had over 2,500 unique user IDs. So thank you again if you were one of those. Now we have a little animation that we will also drop the link to in the chat that was made by the Globe team. This is just demonstrating the air temperature data points that we received through Globe Observer and showing us how people saw the temperature changing during the eclipse. Now you can see we have the path of the eclipse going over North America. And then all of these points you see are data points of temperature that were submitted through Globe. Now I'll drag this forward a little bit. And you can see the eclipse actually start to come over land. And if you look closely at those temperature points, you'll notice they start dropping once the eclipse is happening over that area. And then as the eclipse passes, you can notice the temperatures increasing again. So it's just really neat to be able to see and represent that. And we can actually tell what was going on thanks to your observations. Now, on to some of the research that I did for the 2024 solar eclipse. Again, this is the NASA path here. So hopefully you were close to it or you got to see it online, especially if you were in a cloudy area like I was. This is a map that I created. We have the blue section in the middle, which was the path of totality of the eclipse. The red lines represent 20% increments of totality. So the red lines closest to blue represent 80% totality, 60, 40, etc. All of the black points were points submitted through Globe Observer. The red dots represent 6 cities that I chose to focus on a little bit more. Now I chose these 6 cities because they had a great robustness of globe observations done. So that means they had a good amount of observations before, during, and after the eclipse. So I could really study what was going on throughout the entire event. They also have good proximity to weather stations, which often can be at airports. So of course, a bigger city is going to be more likely to have one nearby. Now, we chose to focus on high-level clouds specifically with their relationship to the eclipse. Now, we especially looked at cirrus and contrails. High and thin clouds, if you didn't know, have a net warming effect on the atmosphere compared to the low-level cloud counterparts, which are more of a cooling effect on the atmosphere. And since 20 to 30% of the globe is regularly covered by high-level clouds, it's especially important for us to fully understand how and when they form, and if any of it's within our control. We've noticed that high-level cloud presence has been increasing between roughly 30 and 65 degrees north latitude. Now, for reference, the United States is about 25 to 40 degrees, or 49 degrees north latitude. So we fall within that range a little bit. And we've seen that this increase is particularly related to aviation. So that tells us if we can control or better predict when contrails will form, then maybe we can lower our impact on these net warming clouds. Of course, a contrail forming depends on several factors, and then persisting and growing into cirrus clouds depends on even more. One of these factors is RHI, which is relative humidity with respect to ice. And that is similar to relative humidity here at the surface, except it's with colder temperatures. So instead of water liquid, it's water as a solid, ice. Now, how do we end up choosing high-level clouds? Well, the past eclipse research, like Dr. Dodson had done, studied temperature and low-level clouds. And since we saw a pattern in the globe observations, noting that people saw increases in the high-level clouds, we thought, why not run with this? Let's see if we can find a real relationship between the solar eclipse and the high-level clouds that people noticed changing. Here's just a sample of what some volunteers saw. This specifically is from Toledo, Ohio, and all three of these were submitted by one volunteer at the same location. So it's super exciting when someone is really dedicated to submitting their data to us like this, because it really paints a good picture. So we have about 3 hours covered here, and you can see that middle picture was submitted pretty close to the eclipse maximum for that person. So it's neat to see that we can also observe how the cloud coverage changed throughout the eclipse. Now, in addition to the globe observations, we also used, again, the data from the weather stations. We used the satellite co-location reports, and we also used various model data. One of those models that we saw were these contrail models, and these were created by the NASA Langley SATCOR team. Now, these take into account various atmospheric conditions like pressure, temperature, relative humidity, etc., to determine where a contrail is likely to form. That doesn't mean a contrail will form there, but it just gives us an indication of what was most likely happening and going on in the atmosphere at the time. So in areas where you see orange and pink, that represents a greater likelihood of contrails forming. The blue and green represents a lower likelihood of contrails forming. Now, of course, you can see that these are all 3 hours apart, and the eclipse can basically happen within that time frame. So this does not capture any of the small scale changes, but it does give us a better overall idea of what might have been going on in the atmosphere, and it can tell us if we're kind of on the right track or not. So ultimately, we were looking to see if solar eclipses could affect cirrus clouds and contrails. Overall, based on your observations, we saw that conditions did typically grow more favorable for contrail formation, especially leading up to the local eclipse maximum. So, of course, this doesn't prove that the solar eclipse definitely changed the atmospheric conditions, made the contrails form, made cirrus clouds form, but it gives us a better idea of what we could look at in the future for more research. So using the ground observations, it seems possible the eclipse could have affected the conditions for the cirrus and contrail formation and made the conditions more favorable. We do have a paper submitted to the Bulletin of the American Astronomical Society, so hopefully you will also get to read the paper if you are interested in learning more about this. Now, a question that we've gotten about the 2024 solar eclipse related to the 2023 partial eclipse was which one had the largest temperature change. Well, we didn't specifically look at this yet, at least for the 2024 eclipse, but it would be expected under the same conditions that a total solar eclipse would produce a larger temperature drop than a partial solar eclipse. But again, there are lots of factors that can change that. So if everything were exactly the same, you could say that the total solar eclipse had a larger temperature drop. But if you have a cloudy area, you can't compare that to a clear area, right? But if you're interested, you can feel free to scan those QR codes. We'll also put the links in the chat for you, so you can maybe do your own research, try to answer that question yourself. And you can also look more specifically at your location and see what other people around you submitted. Now, if you guys have any questions for us, we're happy to answer them. So thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Ashley. And feel free, I don't see any questions put in the chat yet, although we have a comment that actually the observer, Sarah, who took those photos, is actually with us today from Toledo. So that's pretty exciting. So talk about, directly getting to see the analysis of your data. So yeah, feel free if anybody has questions to put them in the chat, or you can raise your hand if you want to ask it aloud. And I can address Jody. We will put we'll put this recording up on the Observer website, and I think we can get a copy of the slides as well and add them up to that page, certainly. Sometimes it takes me a little while to clean up the video and just make sure the captions are right. But yes, we will get that posted. So Ashley, what would be, we have some other eclipses coming up, not in the US, unfortunately, but some other eclipses coming up. Would you, what would be your wish list for future eclipse observations to continue this research?
Yeah, well, I know I personally am excited about the 2027 eclipse because that is projected to be one of the longest maximum eclipses experienced over Egypt. I believe it should be about 7 minutes long or so. So if anyone plans on being there, please take lots of photos, make lots of observations. Of course, we want you to enjoy the actual eclipse, so you don't have to do it near the max, of course. But I really would love if you paid attention specifically to all of the clouds around you and really made good pictures and observations for us, because that's what I'm at least most interested in, is seeing how those clouds really affect what's going on and how the eclipse changes them.
Well, and that was a comment from Waleska that complimenting amazing work, interesting fact about the contrails and cirrus formations. She thought it was related to low-level cloud formation, which, as we noted, that's the research that's been done in the past. And I think another point to make here is that I think the ground observations of contrails are especially useful because those things can be harder to see in satellites. I don't know if you want to expand on that a little bit at all.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so contrails, it's very hard for satellites to pick up on those, especially the satellites that we typically use. The more expensive the satellite, of course, it can be finer resolution. But contrails, especially the ones that don't persist, without your observations, we probably will not get to know that they were even there at all. So having your pictures and your observation that there were any contrails, that you actually saw them changing, is very useful. The satellite we use does tell us that there were high level clouds, but it can't differentiate between the types of clouds that it saw. So if it was a contrail that grew into a cirrus, the only way we would know that is through your observations right now.
And actually, I'm going to stop the sharing just so we have it full screen there. So from Connie, is there any data comparison on temperature changes between 2017 and 2024, or is that in the works?
I don't believe, at least not on the globe side, that it hasn't been done yet, but it's something that we might look into. But you are also more than welcome to give that a shot if you are interested in trying out any sort of data research, data science. But I don't believe that anyone on Globe has planned for that specifically yet.
And I think that's an interesting question because, of course, the 2017 eclipse was in August, whereas this eclipse was in April. So I think this is one of the challenges with we can't control when the eclipses happen and the circumstances. So we can't control as many of the variables as we might like to for research. Um, okay, so this is from Joe. I'm a member of Panama. Excellent presentation. Is there any reason we in other areas as Central America can't usually see a total eclipse? We just see partial eclipses if my memory is not wrong.
I'm not an Eclipse expert at the moment. I've just done this little bit of the project here, but I would just say because you guys are in such a thinner place of land, compared to the United States or Canada or even over Africa, it's probably just luck of the draw with that because most eclipses happen over water, right? So a lot of people don't get to experience them. Hopefully, you get the opportunity to travel to see some, though, if you want to see a total solar eclipse.
Well, and I think that point that since it has to do where eclipses happen has to do with the geometry and the timing and when all these things when the right combination of sun, moon, and earth happens. And so we got lucky in the United States that we had the one in 2017, the one in 2023, the annular and 2024. But the next one in the US is another 20 or more years. So some of it is just that, any given place doesn't get a lot of eclipses. If you can travel, you can see more. And South America got lucky. They had two in a row as well, but recently, but it's not, I guess it's not quite luck, it's math. Right. So it's luck in terms of where you happen to be, but it's really about it, but it's the math and the geometry. So yeah. And I'm not, yeah, lucky math, as Heather says. Yes, it's where you happen to be. Um,
Now, I
now,
know I also need to go back to the aviation weather tattoo that I have.
yes.
So, if you weren't familiar with aviation weather, those three symbols, METAR symbols, it's something that airline pilots use to identify weather. It's in their reports. It's much easier to read and look at symbols than it is text, right? So the two lines that look like an equal sign, that is mist. That is a huge factor in airplanes taking off on time or taking off at all. The three dots that are also like a therefore symbol in math, that was rain. And the one that kind of looked like an R with the dot on top, that is thunderstorms with rain. So those were three of the highest factors that I saw in my master's research affecting airplane delays and takeoffs.
Yeah.
Ashley, can you share that photo again where you had those so
Yes,
people
I can
can
add the
see it
photo
again?
to the chat.
Perfect.
Well, and so we have Josieli asking, interested in more about contrails and the importance they are in the globe. And this might be an opportunity to just at least touch on either Ashley or Maralei, the aviation weather research project that we're focusing on civil air patrol data collection. But I think it sort of gets at why are contrails? Why do we care to study contrails? Why does it matter to researchers to even look at contrails?
Yeah, and this is great. And I'll put the link on our Globe Clouds page. We have a section all about contrails. So I'll put that back there. But if you notice, even in the picture of my background, there's a contrail there. And as you're reporting them, it's important to look at them for a little bit, up to 15 minutes is what the SACCOR team recommends. They actually helped write the GLOBE protocol for contrails because of this, to see if they expand or get bigger or start looking at like cirrus clouds? And so this is one of the biggest questions we have. There's also researchers here at NASA Langley Research Center that are studying different fuels and their contribution, different engines, so working with GE Aerospace, and working on different engines. And so there's many different ways in which studying contrails can correlate to engineering, aeronautics, and science and research. And so with the Civil Air Patrol right now, we're doing an aviation weather mission with them where they're going to be looking at how the humidity changes. And so when you look at contrails, what's happening is that the humidity is changing in those very high altitudes. So the airplane needs to be at least 20,000 feet or higher in order to be able to create a contrail, what we call a contrail, a high level cloud. And then looking at the humidity levels, is there enough humidity to create those icy clouds? And so they're going to help us out and also track the aircrafts that are causing or not causing the airplanes to look at then the fuel, the engines, and the altitude. One of the things we do not get from satellite data very well is the altitudes of these contrails, but citizen scientists can do that very well. So we're very excited, and you can do your contribution by doing a cloud observation using the Globe Observer app. One of the first questions that you get in the app when you say that there are clouds in your sky is how many contrails and which type of contrail. Is it a short-lived? Is it a persistent that kind of looks like a pencil or a twig in the sky? Or is it spreading? And so answering those questions help us out a lot as well. So thank you for your contributions.
Well, and I think one of the things that I think is neat is learning that looking at the contrails that tells you something about the atmosphere at those levels just by looking at them, right? And I think that's one of the things that I find neat about looking up at contrails, like, oh, that plane is not creating a contrail. There must not be enough moisture in the atmosphere at that level, or oh, there's a persistent spreading contrail. There's enough moisture, plus there's the wind pushing the contrail to spread it out. I just think it's neat that just by looking at the contrails, it can tell you something about the conditions that many thousand, feet or meters above my head. And I just think that's just cool for me when I'm taking observations. And then, of course, the data then can be used for more specific scientific research too.
Yeah, and if you want to learn more, there's the Appleman chart, and I'm going to put it in the chat that talks about those humidity levels and temperature levels. And what do you need? What is the humidity level that needs to happen in those really high level? So we're talking about almost to the troposphere, pretty high up in this lower layer of our atmosphere. So really cool stuff.
Yeah. So we're approaching the end of our half hour. I'm not seeing other questions in the chat. Any last thoughts, Ashley or Marley, that you'd like to share related to this?
Keep making observations for us. We clearly use them. So that's great that Sarah, you're here, and I'm glad you got to see us actually use your photos. Thank you.
Thank you. That was so cool to see.
And then remember, we all love our Earth, but we particularly love clouds too. So as you celebrate Valentine's Day, you can make your favorite cloud observations.
A Valentine, the only Valentine the Globe program wants, your observations. Although if you want other Valentines, we do actually have some up on the Observer website as well, and we'll be sharing those on social media also. But data is the Valentine that we want. Okay. Well, thank you all much. Thank you all so much for joining us. Thank you, Marley and Ashley, for the work you've been doing on this and continue to do with the clouds data and the Eclipse data and the contrails data. And we appreciate you sharing the research today. And I'm sure that we'll have you back at a future point to talk about the next bit of research that you're doing related to clouds. So thank you very much, everybody, and have a wonderful day. Our next our in March. Our Globe Observer Connect. I've lost off the top of my head what the date is, Holly. Maybe
It
you
is
can-
March 20th at noon, and we will be talking about trees and the new function in the trees tool in Globe Observer to report genus and species and why that makes a difference and some tips on how to do that.
And that information will be up on the Globe Observer website
Very soon.
probably early next week.
Yeah.
Look for it early next week. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for coming.